Nice.
Okay.
And do you believe in love and love? I can feel something inside me say, I really don't think I'm strong enough. Whoa.
Everybody had guns, and it was like so cool. It was, fucking cool. Oh, can I swear?
Yeah,
I don't
dude, yeah.
Yeah, you can swear.
We'll edit
Yeah,
that
you
out.
can swear.
Okay.
Hello, friends. Welcome to episode numero dos of Learning to Cope. I'm Warren Haney.
And I'm Nick Vogel. Each show we'll be talking to artists and asking them what being a creative is like in a world without personal interaction.
Our guest today is a super dope guy by the name of Andrew Lee Creech. Andrew Lee Creech is a Seattle theater artist. He's been living there for, upwards of 6-7 years now. He's a playwright, he's an actor, he's a general creative in that world, and is a totally awesome human being.
Yeah, and the reason that we're having Andrew on our podcast today is that since the outbreak, he has transitioned his skill set into producing video content for YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram. All of those, he has the same handle, which is papadontcreech, the coolest handle that's in the world.
So. Really known to man. So, yeah, it was an awesome conversation. We were laughing a bunch. I got to learn a lot of stuff. Nick got to learn a lot of stuff. I guess we both did because we were both in the same conversation. But we got to hear about his playwriting work, about how he's able to do this YouTube stuff, and also about Cowboy boycott in the late 1800s. So
we'll talk about Lewis and Clark. We just kind of go through the entirety of human existence in one conversation. Yeah. So
it seems pretty worthwhile.
Yeah. So please, join us on this ride with Andrew. Without further ado, here is the episode.
Get it,
Boom. Red button has been hit.
We're live.
We're live. Hey. Hello, world.
We're kind of live.
Hey.
Wow. Andrew, thank you for coming on to the podcast with us today. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. Yeah. It's
happy to have you.
We've already been having a grand old time. So I look forward to where this conversation goes. So what was it? You got your week going for you, and how's your week been? What you been up to?
Oh, week's been kind of chill, actually.
Yeah.
Doing a couple of videos here, but mainly actually just finishing up some books that I started. I started strong at the beginning of the year. I told myself this is a new year, new me. This is the get my life together year. I'm gonna read and finish a book every month. And
nice.
I started off very strong, very strong.
Mm-hmm.
That start, I'm telling you, if I could win medals for just starting things.
Top of the list,
I always say that too, right? That's what I love about resumes too, acting resumes too. If you could put every resume, every credit that you almost got or every role that you almost got on a resume, that'd be dope.
Right. Every project that you got halfway through starting, got halfway through in the process of, and then having to quit because one of the project members left or something, add that on.
Yeah.
But anyway, your book.
Would you like to name a name there, Warren? How much shade are we throwing here, my guy?
That wasn't anything. Enough about me and my problems. Back to Andrew. And So
I just finished this book called All About Love. It's called All About Love by Bell Hooks.
Go ahead. Tell us more.
Literally just finished. And I've been reading this for a bit. It's so dope. Bell Hooks, so she basically talks about how love is one of those things that we just are afraid to talk about in society, in our culture, afraid to talk about, afraid to experience. And she basically says that one of the big reasons for that is because we all have our own definitions of what love is and what love should mean. Yeah. There's no unified definition of it.
Right.
So this book really attempts to just give us a very grounded, simple, this is a definition of love, a working definition that we can all use, and then moves forward with this book. And I think it's like basically like 13 essays approaching love from all of these different angles, but using this one specific definition of love.
Whoa.
And it's pretty dope.
That is an amazing attempt, like to attempt to define love. That's a cool thing to, that's a big feat. You know what I mean? I love that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's nice to think about a world where we do have like a shared vocabulary around that topic, you know, like.
Exactly. Yeah, because she talks about, because we like to, at least a lot of Hollywood movies and stuff will have you believe that love is something that just happens, right? It just, you see someone and then the sparks fly and all of a sudden it's love at first sight, and it's a feeling, and it's something that happens to you. But she really gives you a more practical approach and says love is actually an action. It is a thing that you do. It is a thing that you give, and a thing that you can be, and the thing that you have to work on and work towards. It's not something that just happens. So it kind of cuts through all the delusional BS around that, right? And says you can love someone if you want to, but it's an actionable thing.
Man.
Nice. Just starting from that is just, it's huge. It's huge. Anyway, so then it inspired, I do a weekly video series called the Sunday Check-In. And at the end of every episode, I always encourage people to go into the next week leading with love. And that is inspired by the writings of Bell Hooks.
Great.
Because if you approach everything from this space of love, then everything good will follow from that. Because it's very easy to be in a negative space, right? And we all know that the way you think about the mindset that you put yourself in will kind of leak out into every aspect of your life, right?
Yeah.
So I always encourage people to lead with love, and hope that will help us get through the tough times, and also help us enjoy the good times to the fullest when we have them.
It's also really good to have a structure to be able to go with with your Sunday check-ins. I can imagine for myself, like that is so nice to be able to have, okay, great. This is another reminder for me to, how can I practice love this week, and how can I practice showing that to somebody else, or to something else even. Like, I'm just going to, send love to my dog and be like, hey, I'm going to give you some more treats today. Or I don't know, I need to read the book. But I think that's a great thing. But it's a great thing to have that structure and have that thing to be able to practically know what you're talking about and know what to mean when you say love and to love. That's cool.
Right.
It just reminds me a little bit of that, like the languages, like love languages. I haven't actually read that book, but a lot of people talk about there's touch, gifts, words of affirmation, time, acts of service. Yeah. That's another way, I guess, that people are learning to talk about love. Cause I've gotten that. I haven't read the book at all. I don't even know who wrote the book on the love languages, but that's disseminated somewhat to me so far. So it's nice to hear that people are writing more about that, so that as a society we can have a more shared and somewhat expansive vocabulary on, I feel like love is at least half or more part of our life, it's such this thing that gives us so much happiness. It's unfortunate that we have maybe not so many good words and vocabulary to describe those emotions and feelings that we're having. So it's cool that I really want to read the book. So maybe I can expand my own vocabulary. Yeah.
And especially for, male identifying people, folks who've grown up in a very particular household, very particular beliefs about what manhood is. I really strongly recommend this book because I've a good majority of folks like that have the hardest time when it comes to expressing emotion and talking about love, right?
Right.
And being vulnerable.
Absolutely.
and communicative and all that stuff. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. There's this one book that...
So just finished that.
You just finished
fun.
that?
Yeah.
Nice. Very good.
Last night.
Oh, all in preparation for the podcast. You were like, I'm getting ready to talk about it. I know what is going on.
So is that like so you said you were trying to like read more books this year. Like, is that the first book that you've finished? I know I haven't finished a book for like probably, I don't even know if I finished a full book in college. I was always just like reading different chapters and like taking things, but I've never like, I literally think it's been since high school since I like closed a book and was like, I read it all. Like, I don't think I've really done that, except I guess plays, but those are like only take like an hour and a half to maybe 3 hours max to read. Have you been able to read it anymore? I know I'm like, I don't even know if I can read a book anymore.
Yeah. So I'm trying to, I feel that. I'm trying to give a good balance. I'm trying to provide a good balance for myself on the materials that I take in. So at any given moment, I'm actually reading like 3 to 6 books. But I'm trying to I'm trying to be very specific about how I approach that. So All About Love, in my view, is, essentially a self-help book.
Yeah.
And then so I always want to be reading like a book for fun, which will usually be a novel. I always want to be reading a play, and then I always want to be reading some kind of self-help book or some kind of book filled with knowledge, something that I can use to improve myself, right?
Yeah.
So that's sort of the approach that I am. Yeah, that's the approach I'm using right now. So All About Love was the first like self-help book I finished this year, but then I also finished a novel called Rose Concannon, which is actually written by a Cornish instructor named Carolyn Hall. Right? Yeah.
Whoa.
Wonderful.
So I read that, and that was really groovy. Shout out to Carolyn. She ends up here in this. Like,
she's a joy.
Yeah. And then I've read, I'm making my way through all of August Wilson's Pittsburgh Cycle.
Oh, yeah.
So I've read a couple of his plays, and I'm in the middle of Joe Turner's Come and Gone right now.
Oof. Yeah.
All right.
Those cycle plays are so cool. I read them like a long time ago. I guess a long time ago. Like, must have read them in like freshman year or something like that. And even then, I would need to go after it again, because I mean, it's, sometimes like you read through something and you're like, I have to read this because I know it's an amazing thing. Like, I know that this is an amazing thing, but then you read it, and for me at least, I was kind of like, okay, I can't even wrap my head around some of like how this structure is going within the story or anything like that. You need to go back and do it again. You know what I mean? So maybe that's an inspiration to go do that. What was it? I just am listening to this audiobook. I did an audiobook for like the first time in forever, and it's called Chaos, and it's like all about this dude. It is a real life event. It's about this guy who started off doing this like just this article about Charlie Manson and how it impacted Hollywood, and this was like back in like the 80s or whatever. And he got that assignment as a journalist, and then ended up like taking a deep dive, going 20 years of researching into that world, discovering new things about how the CIA was involved in the Manson murders, how the Hollywood crowd was involved with the Manson murders, all these different things. It was such a gnarly trip. I downloaded it because I was on this road from Idaho to Arizona, and I was freaking out the whole time. Like, the whole time. It was nuts.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's,
like,
it's like that. Doesn't that have links to when they were experimenting with like LSD?
Yeah.
And, like,
they would like
giving people drugs, and
right. They would.
They didn't know it. They were like studied from a hotel room.
There was a project, I think it was called like Midnight Climax, I think it was called, that they talk about.
That's it. That's the one.
Yeah, where people that went into brothels, they would hire prostitutes to trip them up with LSD, and then they would just watch them on LSD in these brothels.
What?
Yeah, man. Crazy stuff. And
when was this?
It's like the 70s. You can look it up. It's all public record too.
The 70s. Midnight Climax.
Or
wow.
Yeah, right. No, I know. What an awful name to do with?
What a. I mean, that could be so many things, though. That could be a band name. That could be a good, steamy novel. That could be a lot.
That's true.
I'm just picking up my
That's
next book called Midnight Climax. Ladies.
Oh, Lord.
Yeah.
Oh, Lord.
Yeah, but it was nuts. I was like,
But so you went down the research rabbit hole.
Yeah. And like it went from like one like 3-month assignment to him like researching and interviewing people for 20 years, and then he finally just came out with this book. Wow. And it is so crazy. Like Dennis Wilson, like the drummer for the Beach Boys, right? Mm-hmm. He hung out with Charlie Manson and stuff for a long time. Like Manson would bring over like all the Manson family girls and stuff like that, and they would just party on drugs, and it like they would do that pretty occasionally, and just all these different people in the Hollywood crowd. It really is an interesting kind of look into how all that went down and how the Manson murders, how it was originally portrayed, was, he makes a point that it is not how it went down. And it's got a lot of research to back it up.
Oh,
so
wow.
I recommend that book too. You're definitely in for a ride with that one. So I'm not totally finished with it yet, but I was the whole way through, I was driving down and I was like gripping the wheel, like, what is going on? What's our government doing? Am they watching me right now? Are they watching me listen to this book?
You're like, I gotta pull over. I can't keep driving. I gotta we need to talk about this.
Yeah, totally. It was a crazy time. So that's another book that made me think about. Yeah.
I just realized, I've been working on a new play as well, and I've been reading some books for research for that.
Really?
And this play takes place in the 1880s.
Okay.
In Texas, and I really wanted to write a story that involved black cowboys. So I've been doing a lot of research on reading about black cowboys, reading about Reformation and that whole time period, and the ending of slavery, and firsthand accounts, autobiographies written by freed people and former slaves. That's also been a crazy rabbit hole to go down.
That sounds awesome.
And hard, which is also why I was like, I needed to read. That's why I was like, let me get another book that I can read for fun, something, because you got to balance it. You can't just read a self-help book that tells you everything that's wrong with you and then read a bunch of like heavy stuff that deals with your ancestors,
right.
The horror your ancestors face, and then you're also stuck at home in a pandemic. Like you got to find ways to laugh and ways to enjoy.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, you definitely do.
You definitely need some kind of release from all of that. That it's like 3 different perspectives of like just shit happening to your life right there.
So what kind of a play are you? Is it like a thriller? Is it like an action, drama, comedy? What are you leaning towards right now?
Oh Lord, how do I even talk about this play?
Right.
It's basically so in the 1880s there was so I knew that I wanted to write something that was sort of about the golden age of the cowboy, and about how I'm just interested in that time period in general, because it's this, it's the American West, the Old West, and I feel like no period in American history is as romanticized as the American West, the Old West.
Totally.
Yeah.
All the movies we see, first of all, the movies are like super, super whitewashed. But on top of that, it's just like, and everybody had guns, and it was like so cool. Is fucking cool. Oh, can I swear?
Yeah,
I don't
dude. Yeah.
Yeah, you can swear.
We'll edit that out. We'll edit. Okay. So it was just this like time period, and then I came across this essay. I can't remember the guy's name who wrote it, but his argument was that the Old West, that time period was the time period in which the colonizers stopped being colonizers and became American. Like it was the time period in which the American identity was formed.
Wow.
Right.
because it was all this about this westward expansion and moving forward, claiming your own land. You can do anything you want. Like it's so. I was really interested in that particular time period, how it's romanticized, and how the reality shakes out for different people based on where you come from.
Yeah.
In that time period. So, along with that, in the 1880s, there was essentially a cowboy strike because we're starting to see the end of the era. You know, more and more railroads are coming in, which makes the long cattle drives that ranchers used to do kind of obsolete in a way.
Right.
You don't have to travel as far because there's rails everywhere.
Yeah.
And then with the advent of barbed wire fence, the idea of the open range sort of went away as well. So land is becoming more solidified, you know, boundaries, property. You also don't have to travel as far. So then cowboys, that's where the downfall began. And
People are like starting to
there
settle
was-
down, have kids.
Yeah.
Like start families.
And there was a
Yeah.
strike.
Yeah. What?
Because
tell me
what
more
would
of the
happen
strike.
was that
Yeah.
when the cowboys when they went on these cattle drives, they were paid like somewhere between $30, $40, $45 a month to do this work. And some ranchers, cowboys were actually able to negotiate for part of their salary to be paid in calves and cattle.
Right.
So then they could start to build and then they would get their own brand, right? And then they would start to build their own industry, their own livelihood, because then they could take their cattle, raise them, and take them along on the drive and sell them as well. And then they would start to build something for themselves.
Yeah.
Well, as corporations started to come in and buy up ranches, right? Then the corporations would come in and now all of a sudden they would own this ranch and they would say, great. So we're not paying you in cattle anymore. From now on, you only get your $40 a month or whatever it is.
Right.
And so then this opportunity of I can finally start to build something for myself started to go away. And so cowboys basically organized a strike, which failed miserably. It just failed miserably. But that nonetheless that happened. So anyways, this play is not that story specifically, but it is inspired by that story.
Yeah.
But using a black cowboy, and then on top of that, I wanted to explore white characters in this time frame who didn't make their money from slavery.
Yeah.
Because there's also this idea, there's also like this idea that all white people in that time period, especially, if you were for the Confederacy, you're a monster, you were a slave, all of this stuff. But actually, there were a lot of poor white folks that did not benefit from slavery, and that actually added to hatred and added to tensions and stuff in weird ways. So I wanted to explore all of these little different things in an intimate way. So the play, even though it's about cowboys and cattle drives and stuff like that, it all still just takes place on a ranch. It's still a very small, intimate play, like 5 or 6,
Nice.
five characters, something like that.
Man, that sounds exciting.
Long-winded
I can't wait
response.
to.
I'm super excited about that.
Yeah, man. That sounds really cool. I'm excited to read it. I did do a little research on you before we started this cast. You were involved in. Were you the playwright for another historical fiction? It was like or maybe you were in it. It was about like something about the West as well. What is it? Lewis and Clark?
Yeah.
Was it something like that? Or am I off base?
Here we go.
Yes.
Here we go.
Here we go. Now we're getting into it.
Yep.
Yeah, no, I wrote a musical called Journey West: The Legend of Lewis and Clark.
Right.
Okay.
And that went
That's
up
awesome.
in 2018 at Theater Off Jackson.
Very cool. Very cool. So yeah, tell us about that one, because
So yeah, I'm a history buff.
dude, yeah, I love
cool,
history
man.
too.
That's fantastic.
Also, that's just really quick say before you go into Journey West, just the knowledge to just way back then. You're tackling this play back in the 1880s, and again, these fucking corporations coming in, taking all this cowboy, all their shit, man. That was it. I was like, oh, here we go.
It's true.
Here we go again, man. Or here we go.
Truly an American tale.
For the first time, really, I guess. That's like more like the original corporations coming in, right? All the way back then. So I don't know the history of corporations, I guess.
Exactly.
Maybe I should do more research into that before I start saying shit. But, you know.
But no, it is a time where industrialization really started to shake things up, and at a time where everyone was like, I can do anything, and I can own my own land, and I can be my own man, my own person. At that very same time, then there's an entity coming in that has some other things to say about that.
Actually, that's what I imagine.
Or rather, it works out better for others than for some people than it does for others.
Right.
Yep.
Wow.
Yep.
And so Journey West, so that's Lewis and Clark, so that's even earlier before, right? And so exploring the whole West, where the action of that. So tell us more about that one.
Well, that's also just that was a crazy deep dive. I really wanted to. That one is also very much about westward expansion and feeling entitled to it. And for me specifically, the hook for that piece was the fact that Clark had a slave named York, who was on the expedition with him, and a lot of people actually don't know that. It might be common knowledge for a lot of people, but also for a lot of people, they just didn't realize that Clark had a slave on the expedition, and even though he was there and contributed in big ways. He still was never considered a full member of the expedition. So there's that. There's obviously Sacagawea is there,
right?
And I was just really interested. The more I dove into the research, the more I started to feel like, wow, history. Like understand the concept of history is written by the winners. I feel like.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's like perfectly exemplified in that story. So my hook into Lewis and Clark for this particular play or musical was how can I create a story that kind of lifts up some of the other characters, or how can I give voice to the characters who to the losers or the people who didn't win in history.
Right.
And how can I maybe tell it from their perspective, and also have some fun, catchy tunes to dance to, and make it a farce because I love farce and people love to laugh because there's a lot of work. There was a lot of theater happening around that time that was super, super good, but all of it was so dark and so heavy and and I'm like, did we forget how to just make comedies? Did we just forget how to laugh?
Yeah.
So that was sort of the hook for that piece.
Right.
And
that's awesome.
Evan Barrett, who also went to Cornish, was my co-conspirator there. He helped write the music with me.
Fantastic. That's really cool.
Okay.
And I also really love what you're doing too, as far as de-romanticizing figures in history, especially ones that, as like in American history, that we hold so dear to, because it's like these characters in history that are throughout this, like Lewis and Clark, for instance, like growing up in school for me, it's like you are taught that like, oh, these great explorers, they had the most brilliance of minds, and they went westward through there, and they helped discover so much, and you get that absorbed through your brain, like when you're going through school, but it's more it makes more sense to be able to talk about what actually those people were, right? It's more of a service to those people as well, to give the full history and say, like, these people, they did make some great accomplishments, but they didn't make them alone. They also didn't make them fully, like, on purpose. You know what I mean? Sometimes, like, a lot of it was just them guessing, right? It's like they'd never been there before,
right? Oh yeah.
And like, let's just go over fucking here, you know what I mean? And like, oh, we lost somebody.
Right.
That someone died of dysentery over there. Well, okay, we just gotta keep going.
So let's not do that.
Right.
It reminds me of the Oregon Trail.
Yeah.
Right.
And so,
Well, and that's cool too, because then, because people then, I feel like, especially with all of the superhero movies that come out nowadays, don't get me wrong, I love me some Marvel, I love me some DC.
Mm-hmm. So, hot take.
I throw, I gotta be honest about it. They're not all great, but I think we're so inundated with superhero movies, right? And the idea of the superhero, but it feels like on a subconscious level, we're almost being told in order to affect change, you have to have motherfucking superpowers.
Right.
That's the only way some shit is gonna change around here, right? So then it kind of takes the power away from the individual, and that you start to feel powerless. And I think that telling stories about your heroes, or our heroes who might be flawed and might just be regular ass human beings, can be empowering in some ways as well. Because you can say, oh, well, these motherfuckers were just guessing half the time, and they still accomplished something great.
Right.
So I guess maybe I can keep pushing forward too.
Yeah.
But then also telling the truth and exposing the truth. I don't know that people don't know. Like Clark's slave, for instance. So at the end of the expedition, Clark adopted Sacagaway's baby, and then became sort of the go-between for the American government and then indigenous people. He was like, the go-between them.
Right.
And adopted Sacagaway's baby, but then he did not free his slave. He did not free York. Yeah. He still kept him. And so it's like, so he went through this huge journey and like found compassion for one type of person, and then did not offer or extend the same to the other, right?
It's just totally blind.
So it's that kind of stuff that I'm like, we can still point to that, and learn from that and say, hey, these things have been going on for a while now. Yeah. And it continues on today.
That's such a trip to me.
Talk about it.
That's crazy to me. Like you adopt this kid, and that's a whole another thing too, of just like with Native American genocide throughout the United States, and then after that, like the indoctrination of like Native Americans into like the American way of life, but or indigenous people into the American way of life. And here you have this guy that's like trying to, it seems to make a difference, like trying to be like the go-between, like you were saying, between the states and like all the indigenous tribes. And then you are so like, you just refuse to see that. And there's actually like even the founding fathers who had slaves, they even wrote about their own hypocrisy of like, yeah, we understand these values are going on. They're supposed to be for all men, but I know that I own slaves, but they just like, okay, I guess like, all right,
yeah,
just leave it at that. And you're like, you leave it at that?
Yep.
You leave it at that? What?
Right. That's a big ellipsis right there. You want to?
That's a big ellipsis.
People always talk about like the brilliance of our founding fathers, and never like they're also like idiots. Like the idiocy of them was also huge. Like the fact that they ignored that glaring hole, and that being very, wow, I can't even think of the word right now. Like hypocritical. There we go. They're like the hypocrisy of what they were writing literally caused a civil war. Like later, like they're like, we'll just ignore this problem now. It'll work itself out. Huge civil war, massive casualties. Idiots. Like they were idiots.
Right.
They made a lot of mistakes. The Constitution, like there's a lot of mistakes in there. That's why we gotta fix it kind of slowly.
And see that's what kills me too. Not to like drop into the political land too much here, but like when I listen to people like defending certain decisions today and use these old ass laws in their defense, I'm like, y'all, do you not understand that we can change? And they're like, no, it says this in this old ass document, therefore we must stick to this. And I'm like, yo,
and if they only just read the document again, the document literally says you can change this. Like, it's in the document. They're like, please make changes. We know we're idiots. The document says that, and then people are still like, look at this really old law. See, it told you. Like,
look at this law.
Right.
That's just right. You got to make that meme of the old like look at this graph. That meme from what's the band Nickelback. That Nickelback meme. You guys know what I'm talking about?
I have not seen that.
Oh
no.
Well, now
I'm gonna have to Google it.
No, I'm just an idiot.
I have seen it. It's a very memeable video edit.
Right.
It's
basically the song "Look at This."
Warren, I can't even believe you remember that. That was like years ago.
I have a very selective memory. In the sense,
yeah, he says it like. He also sings it way off key. Yeah, it's very.
Yeah, I really took this to a great route. All right.
Yeah, we went from a very intellectual conversation about our history to look at this graph by Nickelback.
Nickelback.
Yep. So we're doing great.
As all the great conversations do.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So moving on. One of the things that we wanted to talk about too, like what. Obviously we're in the middle of a pandemic right now, and we are learning how to get out of this lockdown. We're learning how to shape ourselves around this new way of life. But one of the things that I was talking with you about this earlier, Andrew, but also wanting to hear your perspective on what happened before. What were you doing before Corona was going on? And then how did coronavirus impact your livelihood? What went on for you?
Yeah, I just before all of the lockdown happened, like I said earlier, this was going to be a year of massive change for me.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
So in January, I actually took myself on a little writer's retreat that I couldn't afford, but did it anyways because it was important to my growth.
Yeah.
And I spent, like 3 or 4 days on the Willamette River, in this hotel by the Willamette River, and just kind of, held up in there and wrote and thought and just kind of sat with myself as an artist, as a human being, and sat with all of these different things that I had thought about, all of these different play ideas, all of these different perspectives, just myself in general, and finally had the time to just throw them all in a pot together and see how they mix. And so I came back from that trip with I had a whole new artistic statement. I had a whole new purpose. I had it was a 9 play it was an outline for 9 different plays that were thematically linked, that I was going to start work on. And then I was going to come back and start rehearsals for a play called Pipeline at Seattle Public Theater. And so I'd be acting in that one. And then I had two workshops of new plays that I have written, am in the process of writing, that were scheduled to receive workshops and readings later on this year. So that's where I was. I was basically in the space of I am ready to sit down and write a 9-play epic, and I am ready to start acting again. And later on this year, I'm going to have readings and workshops of 2 brand new plays. So that's where I was.
Right. And then
and then that Rona, and the play I was
Rone.
Then Miss Rona came in, and the play I was acting in, we shut down on our first day of tech. We came in.
Oh man!
We came into tech. They gave us the walkthrough. We saw the set. We saw the space, our dressing rooms, and then we were like, cool. So we're shutting down. And watch your emails. We hope to, we hope we can start up again in May.
Oh. Hey guys,
and obviously that's not going to happen.
Right. Look at everything around you. Look at where you're not performing. Wow.
Right?
Isn't it wonderful?
Yeah, it was the coldest. It was like it's like when you get your pay stub and it shows you how much you made and how much they actually give you after taxes. Right?
You're like, wait, this can't be right.
Right.
Yeah, you're right. You're like, wait a minute.
I literally marched a pay stub into my HR office the first time I got one in New York. The New York taxes are a little bit crazy, and I didn't know how much was supposed to be actually taken out. So I got it, and in comparison to the Seattle paycheck, I literally like took it in there and I was like, this can't be right. Like I like sat down and we like just like did the math, and then I was obviously the pay stub was correct. Like a computer did the math. Like I'm like,
Right.
I just couldn't believe it.
You thought you had something up on the computer,
Right?
You can't challenge the computer.
Can't challenge the computer.
Yeah. No.
That's so funny. You're like, listen, no one else has thought about this. Look at this thing. I'm going to get my money.
Like, there's no way this is correct.
Well, it
Listen,
turns
I
out.
took AP calculus. I don't know what that. I didn't see that computer nowhere near my class.
Yeah.
I excel.
Yeah.
Yeah, how do I know that computer's got a degree? Okay, huh? I got a degree.
You're right.
Yeah. I want to see that computer's credentials. Okay.
Yeah, so I mean,
Yeah.
so that's where I was. So I was all about theater. I was in all of these, had all of these different projects just about to pop off, and everything kind of stopped.
So is that what led you down the road of like doing all this video content that you've been releasing?
Yeah, essentially, yes. When I graduated from Cornish, my graduation gift was a Canon DSLR camera.
Nice.
And I
That's a
knew
great
that,
gift.
I always loved sketch comedy and, comedy in general. Making people laugh is, makes life worth living, honestly,
Mm-hmm.
And so I knew that was something that I'd always wanted to do, and I planned to do that coming out of Cornish, but it just didn't happen. I ended up getting a lot of acting gigs. I'm blessed to have gotten work immediately out of Cornish, but I sort of just went hard into theater, and more away from film and sketch comedy, stuff like that.
Sure.
But then I all of a sudden had the time to do so, and I'd actually filmed something a long time ago on my camera phone that I just never did anything with. And then one day during quarantine, I was like, I might as well just put it together and put it out.
Yeah.
And so I did, and it was like this little video of, what how I believe Seattle weather to be.
Yeah.
And there was a really positive reaction to it, and I was like, dope, let's keep going. I got time, might as well. I
Yeah.
got time, I got camera,
I got my
collecting
thoughts.
dust. Let's do it.
I know I can talk.
Right.
I got it all, You know what? Just really quick. Oh, actually, really quick. So what's your handle on YouTube again? Can you say that for us?
Yeah, papadontcreech. Creech is my
Papa
last
Don't
name.
Creech.
CREECH.
I love
All
it.
one word. Yep.
Fantastic. I just wanted you to say that also because it's a super cool
And
name to use on there. I was like, oh, hell yeah. But great.
And that's the same handle across all platforms.
Fantastic.
Nice.
You know what, Nick? Andrew actually was, when I went to Cornish to check out different schools, I went to Cornish, and the first show I saw of Cornish's was a show that Andrew was in. He was in Bat Boy? You were Bat Boy the musical, I think it was.
Honey,
Bad Boy.
Yeah, that's what it was. And it was Andrew and Ben Whipple. I remember just blowing me away when they were doing that. Andrew was playing this preacher guy, and
Yo.
I was like laughing and crying. It was fantastic.
That's awesome.
That,
I haven't actually seen Bat Boy. I've heard really good things about it. I feel like that one like has lived in infamy, that show, because I knew Ben Whipple was in it, and he's talked about it a little bit as well, but I didn't know. I never connected the dots that it was you and him. That's fantastic.
mm-hmm.
Ben killed that. Ben killed that role.
He really did. He did an amazing job. He was Bat Boy.
Killed it.
in that, and so he was so good. But yeah, I was just saying, I was like, I just remember that. I was like, oh my gosh, like I remember seeing this like preacher come out during the one of the musical numbers. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you were cracking me up that whole time. I remember laughing. So
yes, that purple suit.
That purple suit,
gorgeous. I want to be buried in that suit. That's what I want for my life, at the end of my life.
Dude, there's nothing.
They're going to use this podcast now after you die. They're going to like rewind the tape and they're going to bury you in that. And be like, this is the only thing he's ever said about when he was going to die, what he wanted to wear. So
that's so true. You know, let's take this time right now to lay out my entire will.
I'm ready.
What better place to do so? Let's do it.
Right here.
Right here.
Our podcast legally binding? This is a good question.
By the way, yeah. Can you notarize a podcast? Can you notarize it? So good. Oh man.
So, okay, I have one more. I have a lot of standard questions, but I have one that I want to ask about transferable skills. So I love that you've been doing the videos. I've seen a lot of them. They're fantastic. If anyone hasn't looked them up, papadontcreech, any platform, they're wonderful. Mm-hmm. What skills were like most easily transferable for you? And then which ones did you have to like develop on your own when it comes to creating this video content?
Yeah, boom. Take that question, man. Look at
that. I mean, I would say obviously, basic acting skills.
Sure. Yeah. Right.
Basic performance, obviously. But I found that the voiceover class that I took with Kate Meyer actually has helped me quite a bit.
Yep. Great course.
So that, yeah. And it just, because it just gives the power of the voice can't be stated enough. Like, it's just such an important, incredible skill. And when you learn how to master it, it's just, it can be so profitable, one, because that can transfer over to all kinds of different work, right?
Yeah.
So definitely the voiceover class. I also took a film audition class with Jody Rothfield.
Oh, cool.
Okay, yeah.
And I found that like, I think the basics of that class helped me, but really that kind of goes into that starts to answer the question, the part B to your question, which is what did I have to kind of learn? And I think for me, because I haven't done a whole lot of film work, I've done a little film work here and there, but I found that early on, I would stop acting right after I say a line or right after I say something. Whereas I think you have to hold it a little bit longer, just because you have to start to get into the mind frame of how am I going to edit this together? How does it look? How does the final product look versus what am I feeling and doing in the moment? Yeah. So I think that's the one of the big things that I had to learn.
Thinking about it from the camera's perspective, and
right. And learning how to craft performance specifically for camera and for editing.
Yeah.
It's a different experience. And then also, in the theater, you're supposed to project. You learn so much about projecting and throwing your voice to the back wall or to the last row, but you don't necessarily have to do that when the camera is floating in front of your face.
Yeah.
No.
On voice is like two different things, right? And when you have different mediums, so...
I remember going to an audition for like a short film, and I hadn't auditioned. It was like one of the first film auditions I'd ever been in, and like I went in, and then the room was so small compared to like a theater audition room where there's like a space for you to perform and do your thing. Like they literally like just sat me in like literally, I don't think it was bigger than a closet, and there was like 3 people in there like watching me act like 2 feet from my face, and I'm just like I'm like yelling at you. I don't know what to do. I hadn't even thought about. I'm like, I'm screaming. You're right here. Like, yeah.
What, Gladys?
You are.
That was
Lewis.
that was the big. That was like my. I walked out of that audition. I was just like, okay, yeah, that's what I can do differently next time for any film.
Yep.
Like,
Yep.
I knew
Yep.
immediately, but I didn't even know how to change. Like, I had never even thought to like, oh, like they're gonna like it's gonna be for film. Like, I don't really need to like say everything so loud and you know, I had planned like this monologue, which I also had big arm movements, and I was planning on like walking around and literally it was like a closet with 3 chairs, and I'm just like, I had to sit down and yell at them. It was
So. You had this whole routine.
Yep.
But hey, Nick, respect to just you pursuing it fully, right? To like, you know, you're gonna if I'm limited in this space, I might as well just use all that theater prep to put it in my voice, right? And just let them have it.
Exactly.
You know, wake them up, right? That's good. It's like 3 feet away, and you're just like, to be or not to be? That is the question. That's what it's basically like in film. That's what it's like when you hear that back from your just being on voice on like from your training in theater to listening to it in the camera. You're like, oh my God, what?
I guess my first experience was when they filmed our like auditions at Cornish. I don't know if they did this at the end of your Cornish career, but for us in our audition class, they filmed it so that we'd have like a self-tape to send people. Yeah, they never talked to us about how to like incorporate that into like for even just for this audition that we're doing in front of the camera. Like they never were like, all right, so normally you do it this big, and now do it so small. So yeah.
Yeah.
That's a very general way to put that, but
I still have that. I still actually have my video recording of auditions, like that one you're talking about, Nick. I have one of that on my Google Drive still. And I watch it every now and again just to give myself a little kick in the nuts every now and again. You know, just when it's like if I'm feeling too,
you feel your head getting too big.
Yeah, exactly. Then I look back on that one. It's like I know that they recorded our raisin in a glass of milk scenes, and I actually still haven't seen that from freshman year. You know, did you ever?
Raisin in the Sun.
Yeah. Did you raisin in glass of milk? That's a whole other project. Sorry, but Raisin in the Sun scenes. Did you ever watch those when you were a senior, Andrew?
Hell no. I didn't listen. I don't like watching myself on film. I don't like listening to myself on recordings.
Yeah.
I don't like it.
Right.
Because I judge myself, and that's one of the things that I've had to learn in this process as well, is how to not be too precious with anything. One.
Yeah.
Right. Because it's so easy to not ever put out anything because you can just judge it to death, or if you wait for something to be perfect, then it's never gonna get out.
Right.
But also, I feel like now more than ever, it's not about being precious with every little thing. It's actually about just creating as much as you can. And that doesn't mean put out crap.
Yeah.
I want to be very clear. That doesn't mean put out crap. But
Yeah.
that does mean you don't have to have all of the fancy equipment. You don't have to have everything, a thing be as perfect as it possibly can before people can see it, especially right now.
Yeah, I heard this quote from Jacob Collier that was like, it's the act of creation that's special, not always like what's created, right? It's like the fact that you're creating it all is like a miracle,
Right.
when it comes to making new things. So like that's the thing that you really want to celebrate, is like the act of doing it rather than, you know, and it's great to, of course, like if your work is lauded and you get like put in the New York Times or whatever, like fantastic, you know, but it's always good to remember, like you should be patting yourself on the back, even for just like typing out a single page of a play, because like that act of creation is so special.
Can I just say something though? Can I just say a hot take really quick? Fuck Jacob Collier. Are you kidding me? What? You're talking?
What?
Just because what we're talking about and everything. That guy is literally the most talented man of our generation right
Okay,
now.
yeah, that's true. That's true.
But
Like, it's weird coming from
anything
his
that guy
mouth,
says-
right? Because you're like, oh, everything is perfect. You just want a Grammy, and you're like 12. Like, all right,
Yeah, right. I'm like, you're like, anything that you do, just creating is a miracle. And I'm like, yeah, dude, you create something and you can put it on an album to sell to millions of people. So I'm like, okay, I'm just kidding. I'm not actually meaning fuck Jacob Collier. I listen to his music. He's beautiful. I'm just jealous.
I feel that. But here's what I say to you, Warren. Lead with love.
Huh?
Lead with love.
Thank you.
No, but like
to
take that and put it in a to take that perspective and put it in it just in a different light. It's about celebrating the creation, the act of creation. But I think it's also, if you're enjoying what you're doing and what you're putting out, I think that people will see that in the content you're creating or the art you're creating, and that will transfer over, and that goes a long way as well. So it's not just about. So I think there's another way to look at it in terms of like talent level or success level, whatever. He can just create something and sell 1 million, blah, 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 blah.
Right.
But I can create something and it might not reach millions of people. But if I am really enjoying it and have the passion for it and put all of that passion into it, I think that people will see that. And I think that that's the thing that makes it worthwhile.
Yeah, I appreciate you for putting that.
Does that make sense?
You're exactly right on that, and Jacob Collier is exactly right on that. The thing is that I just hate that he's right on that. You know what I mean? That damn guy. That's my hot take. I'm done. I apologize.
Man, all right. Well, we can cross Jacob Collier off the guest list.
Yeah, right. No, can't have him on. I just would feel I'd just be too angry. I would.
Too threatened?
Yeah, I would be. Speaking of like all about love, you know what I mean? It's like I need to learn that toxic masculinity. I would just show up too much, obviously, if Jacob Collier would be on, But that's why we don't need him. But I need to stop talking before I dig us a hole out that we can't get out of.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So.
Yo, you were taking a hard stance here on this Jacob Collier.
I don't know where it's coming from. But
it's a deep well of hatred bubbling over in Warren's heart currently.
Ooh, all right. So Bell Hooks.
We need to go to church with Papa Don't Creech. Yeah. We got to lead with love.
Yeah, right. Lead with love.
Lead with love, and I think take inspiration from the people who are successful, and that's a part of lead with love.
That's exactly right.
To, find on my discovery too, because it's super easy to look at somebody who's successful and be like, man, fuck them, ain't shit. But then it's like, but what are as opposed to taking that perspective, what if we applaud them, lead with love, and go, you know what are they doing that makes them so successful? And what can I glean from that? What can I take from that and incorporate into my own process?
Right.
I heard this thing. It was like someone, I don't remember who was talking. Sorry if I stole this from you, whoever's listening. But someone was talking about the myth. How did they say it? It was like the myth of scarcity in art is yeah, that was what it was. Like there's this myth of scarcity that I think plagues a lot of people who, I mean, probably everywhere, right? But for artists in particular, we see someone who's it's very easy as an actor if you're showing up at auditions and you're seeing the same people that are trying for your part to think about it as some sort of competition, and to think about it as they're my type. If they get this role, I won't get a role like that, and they'll be the ones that are hired and that get this maybe that end up being famous or whatever. But but instead you can frame it as okay, that person looks exactly like me and talks exactly like me, and they're getting hired. That's such good news for me because let's say that that carbon copy person of you that got the role, well, let's say they got a role in a Marvel film. Well, who's going to want a similar actor to play that their character? DC. DC is going to call you next and be like, hey, you look, talk, walk exactly like this guy that's making millions for Marvel. Come be in our movie that we're making That's like and then you have a leg up there. So you can like think about it a little bit like, oh, if someone like me is getting so much work, then I will get more work in the future anyway. Yeah. So then you can like lift each other up and just have a more positive outlook on
I like that. I think there's something to just the simple truth of individuality, and that it blows my mind like that. You could have two twins and they could live an identical life. They've spent every single day together, and they're basically attached to the hip, but they would still have totally different perspectives on their lives, right? You can't ever fully replicate someone else's perspective except your own. Every attempt is just merely an attempt at that. And just that you can come in and have an interpretation of a character when you go into audition, or if you have a different interpretation of this tree when you go to paint this canvas, that's your interpretation to own, just based off of your own life and experiences, everything that you've grown to have and what you've been born with, right? And so that goes along with what you're saying, and it's one of the most beautiful things about it is that every human being has a potential and a well to use to create and make something beautiful that we can all connect to.
That well is unique to every person.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. Y'all, are you on TikTok? That silence says hell no and shut up. That's what that silence just told me.
Let me ask you this. Are you on TikTok?
This interview is over.
Is Papadontcreech on TikTok?
That's the question.
Well, now I'm not so sure. Yes, I am.
Yeah, we're the millennial generation.
How successful I am at it.
We're the millennial generation that are just like strict, like no TikTok. We're anti-TikTok guys. Look out.
Well, I bring it up because when you talk about like artistic scarcity, this is one of the things that I think is kind of fascinating to me about TikTok. And this might be true with Vine too. I don't know, because I missed the whole Vine craze.
Yeah, right. Bring Vine back. That's what I'd say. As a millennial, bring Vine back.
I have no idea. I didn't even download it.
I'm just kidding.
But on TikTok, there'll be like these trends, right? There'll be this thing. Somebody will do this video that's super, super funny, and then it takes off, and then thousands of people will do their own interpretations of that video. And some people just straight up rip it off and try to claim it as their own or whatever. I'm not talking about those people. But there are people who actually take the same idea and give it a different spin, or expand on it in a new way, or take it out of context and do something completely different and unexpected with it. And like, y'all, sometimes that shit is just so yummy. Sometimes it's so yummy to go down that rabbit hole.
It's like a chain letter effect.
It's like that, it's like the and it's like the clown, the idea that everything has been done. There's no new ideas, or the idea that certain comedy bits have been around for like hundreds of years.
Right.
Like people slipping on banana peels, or like, those like very specific sticky things. There's a reason that they stick around, and it's not because of the bit itself, but it's because of the individual doing the bit and what they bring to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And every iteration of it, when it's done well, it's refreshing, right? There's a new life that's brought into that bit. Even though it's one that you've seen, like, oh, I know what he's doing, or I know what she's doing, but I see exactly what she's doing. That's part of what makes it so funny, right? You're like, I identify with what she's doing there, and that is hilarious because she's doing it in the way that she does in her body that I never would have thought of in that way, right? And there's a whole new image that comes from that.
Well, and every time you're watching a cartoon and there's a banana anywhere, it's immediately dramatic irony for everyone that's watching, because we all know why the banana is there.
Right. Right.
Which, speaking of, the one that always gets me is the fishing and pulling a boot out of the sea. This one always like, why? How many people throughout the years are just losing boots and old shoes. And how many people are just pulling them? Is this a phenomenon that happens so often?
Yeah.
That is just immortalized, and
I'm
like,
just
I don't
imagining the optimist version. Like you get one boot, so you go back in for the other one.
Oh,
for perfect. I'm almost to a set.
yeah, right. Collect the whole set.
I almost got another. I
Gotta
almost new
catch
pair
'em
of
all. Yeah.
That's so good. The one I always really loved was like the whole trope of like you running off a cliff, but like you stay in the air for a moment. You're like you don't realize that you ran off a cliff,
yeah.
and then you're like, wait, did I run off a cliff? And then you fall. Like when you realize that happened.
Gravity isn't
That's
real
a
until
classic-
you recognize it.
Exactly. Yep. Classic rule of tuning.
Man, tuning's great. Clown is great. That was another thing about.
Now I want to watch some Looney Tunes.
Yeah, seriously. This is like bringing up all these things. Looney Tunes, Dynamite. You know what I mean? I didn't really. You don't use Dynamite that much as you were grown up
Dynamite's
to
so
believe.
funny.
You feel like you would use
TNT.
Dynamite for a lot of things, but
Right. You would think, you'd think you could pick up Dynamite at 7-Eleven.
Right.
It's just, it seemed.
Gotta go capture a
was
roadrunner.
yeah, from Acme Corporation.
Meet me.
Isn't that an actual corporation?
Right.
Like, isn't that like an actual thing? Acme Corporation? Or
I feel like it is.
did they? I don't know what came first, like the Acme, the
I don't
corporation, or
I feel like if it is a real corporation, I would hope that it came before. Because I feel like if you came out with a corporation today and called it Acme, no one would buy products because it was always defective or it never like worked out. Like your business would go under immediately. You would be like, I'm not fucking with that Acme shit.
what a
that Acme.
Right.
Why'd we listen
Like
to
whoever's
Jim?
selling explosive, it's like, I'll go to Lockheed Martin. Like, I don't know why.
He said it would be great. He said it would get all the kids that listen to Looney Tunes. Well, look here.
Can you imagine like going to
I'm gonna
war,
need a-
loading your gun, and then it shoots just like something that says bang?
Yeah, right. Like, I'm gonna need the extended warranty on this.
Right. Oh, man. So one of the things, too, is like, so we're going through right now. You're still over in Seattle, right, Andrew?
Yes.
Yeah. How is,
Yes.
I mean, like, how has that been over there? How's the city been? Like, I have no clue what's going on over there right now.
I mean, it's so there's the stay-at-home order, and I guess, I've been seeing. So okay, I'll put it like this:
Yeah.
when the stay-at-home order first came down, and I would go out, I would take a trip to the store or whatever, I would see more people on the street than I did when there was no shelter in place.
What?
Oh, wow.
And that blew my mind. Yes, especially on Capitol Hill. It blew my mind because I was like, why are everybody's out jogging, walking, holding hand? I saw some people on the street just standing there, not doing shit.
Oh my God.
Just standing there, they're just like, I don't got shit to do, but I know I'm not doing shit inside. I'm going to go ahead and do
That's hilarious.
I'm just
nothing
going to be outside.
out on the sidewalk. Yes.
Because I feel like Seattle is introverted, like, as a city. Like, no, like, I remember being there. I lived on Capitol Hill, and I would walk out, and if it's, like, past 7, and it's literally any time that's not the summer. Like, no one's out. It's dead. But, like, everyone's just, like, inside and depressed because there's no sun and sipping coffee. It's just funny for me to, think about someone just, like, standing outside, like, huddled up, drinking coffee, and just like, well, now I don't want to be inside.
Yeah.
Yep.
I don't know.
Yeah, Seattle does turn into a ghost town at night. It really does.
Right.
It does.
It really, and I didn't realize how true that was until I spent a week in New York, and that's when I was like, "Oh shit!"
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
New York is alive.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah,
That's one of the reasons why
That's where I'm at right now.
Yeah. I can't imagine right now how it is over there. But honestly, like, dude, that blows my mind, though, Andrew, that, like, I would imagine, like, how Seattle would be, that everybody would just fully go with it. But from what you're telling me, it was just, like, everybody went, at least as far as the beginning of this goes, like, everybody just was like, all right, lockdown order. I'm gonna go out and get my shopping done. Like, is that? That's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple of things happening there. I think one, it's people are just not wanting to be inside,
Right.
and so they go out, and even if they're like, we can't. That's how I justify someone just standing on the street not doing anything.
Yeah.
Wasn't even looking at a phone, just staring off into the distance.
It's one of those things that's like when you're told not to do something, but it makes you really want to go do it, right?
Yeah.
And so it's like,
So it's just people who are just like not wanting to be inside. So there's that, and then I think this whole situation has just it's just disrupted the rhythms of our lives,
right.
right?
Yeah.
And so we're doing things that we normally deemed less, like we don't have the time to do this. Like a lot of people are like calling their families more, calling people, trying to reach out and connect with people more often. I'm seeing like people. There are people that are doing like whole class reunions over Zoom now, right? Like folks you went to school with, you haven't seen in 10 years. People are doing Zoom calls. I'm hearing a lot of ex-boyfriends and, exes are sliding in the DMs right now of people, trying to reconnect.
Course.
So it's just like this stay-at-home order has given us an opportunity to re-examine how our lives have been structured and maybe make some different choices. So that's how I explain, like people are going on walks more often. People are just trying to be out. I think there's that, what was that? There's an episode of The Simpsons that kind of I just watched recently that reminds me of it, where like the kids, I think there was either some kind of curfew. Oh no, this is what it was. I think they like canceled Itchy and Scratchy. Or no, they took all the violence out of the show, Itchy and Scratchy, and it just became this boring show about friendship, which I'm sure had good morals and values and stuff, but none of the kids wanted to watch it anymore. So they all went outside and started playing again. And there's this great scene where you see it's like the camera's like looking down the street and all of these front doors open simultaneously and these kids walk out and they're like rubbing their eyes,
Right.
looking bewildered, right? They're like, what is the sun? What is that? And it was like them learning and discovering how to be with each other and how to play and how to enjoy things away from the screen again, all that stuff. So I think that's kind of, where we are, or at least that may be where we're headed.
Yeah, for sure.
In a way.
Do you feel like that's kind of where we're heading as far as going outside of coronavirus, when we are getting past this, moving forward, getting out of lockdown? Is that how you're feeling?
I mean, that's my hope. My hope is that we reassess how we've been living our lives and that we establish a new norm. I don't want to go back to normal. I don't want to go back to the way things were before, because in my view, the way things were before is broken.
Right.
I think we have a new opportunity, and it would be unfortunate if we didn't hold ourselves accountable and jump on that opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of like holes in society have been exposed, like things that were like
exposed.
Yes. Yeah. Things that were like just below the surface are like now like wide open sores,
Yes.
That hopefully we can see and treat now that at least it's here.
Right.
Right. I'm like, there's no way any company can say, oh, you have to absolutely come down to the office and be here 5 days a week,
right,
all day in order to work for us. And it's like, well, clearly that's not true because you figured out how to do it during quarantine.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, a lot of companies actually are
folks with
experiencing
disabilities. Like, they had trouble, folks with disabilities had trouble getting to work, and then there was like some weird requirements and stuff like that. It's like, well, clearly we figured out how to do it. So moving forward, we should not be going back to the old practices.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I'm just picturing all these like empty office buildings in Manhattan. Like and how we could
Yeah.
maybe like what would we do with all that extra space? Like if people
Yeah.
really were more working from home, like there's a lot that we could be done. That's like we could have a lot more housing. We could have more like performance spaces, more recreational stuff. Things that actually give people joy rather than like, oh, you don't need to come into the office. So that way, when you're going out every day, maybe that's to go, to your favorite coffee shop and then watch a play rather than like, because that's, I think one of the problems with people having to like commute into work and come back into work is that like it's hurtful to the economy in the way that it really can bring you down. Like you don't want to go out. Sometimes it's hard like to go see a Friday night show because you've been working 9 to 5 all week. And like it's your first time that you don't have work the next day. Like you just want to get some sleep. Well, maybe that's not going to be such a problem anymore. Maybe people will be more willing to go out and go do recreational things because they don't have to go out to go do work. They get to stay in.
Right.
And so when they go out, now it's this like cool adventure that they can go see a play, they can go to a movie, whatever they're doing,
Absolutely. Especially if a commute regularly takes up like 4 hours of your day.
Right. Yeah.
And then you have to spend another 8 working. Like, of course, people are going to be burned out. So if you eliminate some of that, yeah, I totally hear you.
And also just like you're being cooped up in your house all day just from working, right? If that becomes a new normal, then it's going to be a great thing to be able to stretch your legs, get out of the house. That's your exit from work, right? So that's an interesting perspective too. There you go. That's cool. I would like that, man. I would like to be able to be in a world where the exciting thing to do is like the way to relax and stretch your legs and go out is to go out now, right? I like that.
Yeah.
Especially in a big city like New York.
And I think
Yeah.
And I think you mentioned what we could do with all of that extra space. Someone said housing, right? And when you say that, I specifically think about how do we attack the homeless situation, or people experiencing homelessness.
Yeah.
Right.
If we had more available space, we could create and fund more spaces for folks.
Yeah.
Right?
Totally.
Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, even in New York right now, I didn't read the full story. I'll admit to that, but I know that they're putting a lot of the homeless population in hotels. So it's like, not only we have like a bunch of empty office spaces, but like even with just the hotel beds that are already here in the, from the past system, we're already able to like pretty much clean up all the homelessness and like put people in a room with a shower and a bed. Just because the hotels are empty. Like imagine what we could do if we repurposed a bunch of the office space.
Yep.
It's beautiful in a way. Yeah, like there's got to be hope, man. We're going to be coming out of this, and it's been a hard hit. I mean, like none of us really expected any of this to happen, but it's through this time that we end up trying to get it back on our feet and rethinking things, right? That's just what humans do. And so I'm excited for what's coming down the line, right? And the possibilities that new people are going to be able to have, like different ideas that are going to be able to be shared because of it's going to be, because of the opportunities for it now. So yeah, we're trying to be optimistic as we can.
Yeah, we have to. I think.
Yeah.
Right.
I think so.
It's not
too.
helpful to be pessimistic.
Yeah.
No.
Pessimistic. What about art? Where are we coming out of this?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the questions I wanted to ask you. Like, what is the next new theme you're gonna like? What do you think you're gonna see after this? Like, do you think there's gonna be like a bunch more apocalypse movies that come out, or like what kind of a genre is gonna have like a giant surge because of this? This virus.
I don't know. That's a hard one. Apocalypse movies have always been, I think always been popular and always been around. And like Netflix, all the streaming services, they're conspiring, I'm convinced. Because over the last like month or so, I'm seeing pandemic, I'm seeing Outbreak, Like 28 days, like all of these movies are starting to
Contagion.
pop up on streaming, and I'm like, y'all, I'm like, y'all are clowning right now.
Oh, they know.
I gotta say,
Feeding in.
I definitely watched 28 Days Later, like right when the lockdown order first started. I had to. I watched it. I've never seen it before either. It's a great movie.
It's a great movie.
Yeah.
Yes. If you're a zombie movie fan, 28 Days Later is a really, really good twist on the genre.
Yeah.
Really good film.
About it.
And so many great
I feel
performances.
like I like zombies more than I appreciate.
Ooh.
Say what?
I said I feel like I like zombies more than I consume the content of zombies. Or at least I guess I just had a big zombie phase, because there was a phase where I was reading that like zombie survival guide or World War Z by the same author, and then I was also watching The Walking Dead, and then I was also like, I think that's probably around the same time. I know Spencer's not talking with us now. Spencer had like a zombie musical going on too. In high school.
Right.
Yeah, so I think there was like that moment in culture where zombies were like the number one thing, you know. So maybe zombies will make a comeback. I don't know.
I mean, honestly, I could see that. I could see zombies more than anything else making a resurgence, because that's just what happens with horror films, with, you know, that kind of with the monster genre in general. Monsters are created by society in order to, you know, either, you know, demonize or vilify a specific entity or thing, or a way to talk about something that's in our culture. That was one of the other things that I was working on with Journey West. That, you know, Sasquatch makes an appearance in Journey West, and I was specifically looking at that because, you know, one of the things that we did as Americans is we demonized Native Americans, indigenous tribes, right? We made them out to be monsters in order to justify taking their space and killing them.
Right.
So that's just something that we do. So Sasquatch was a sort of a metaphor for that in my brain. But I could totally see zombies doing that, because that perfectly encapsulates what's happening right now.
Yeah, it's like a monstrous version of the virus, I guess. Yeah, would be zombies.
Yeah.
Boom.
Yeah, I could see that. So I could see that happening. In terms of performance, like live performance, I wonder if we're going to see more engagement online, more streaming. I mean, we're definitely seeing that stuff now, but we're actually seeing the genesis. The theater in terms of live streaming, in terms of like digitized theater, I think we're seeing the embryonic like formation of it right now.
Yeah.
We're really starting to understand what it is, and I think that, I mean, it could go one of two ways. After this is over, we might just drop it and say, thank God we can get back into theaters, or people might actually try to continue on with it and continue to expand it.
Yeah. You know, that makes me think.
I know there's go ahead.
Oh, yeah, well, that just makes me think too, just you know, for me, I've always been like, all right, if I'm watching theater, I want to watch it live. I want to be in the theater. I want to be in the audience. I want to watch what's going on. And if I'm watching film, I want to be able to just like watch it, you know, on my TV, however you watch it, right? But it's to your point of what you're kind of saying is like, they've been doing so much lately, like National Theater, of course, and different theater companies that are larger being able to release their plays like live for people to be able to view, and they're getting so good at that. Some of the productions that you see, like I remember seeing like Frankenstein that the National Theater Live put out, and with Benedict Cumberbatch in it, and you know, it's fantastically filmed. They're like you're learning how to use even the medium of live performance for the purposes of a film performance, and maybe there's more of that going on. Maybe people get better at doing that. But I've never really made that connection before. I never really thought of, you know, filming theater as a viable option, actually. But now it's kind of
Yeah.
the possibility.
Yeah, I have my feelings about that.
Yeah, right, right.
I'm kind of a snob in that way too.
Of course.
I want to see it live. I'm not trying to see no bullshit.
Yeah.
Yep.
I want to be able.
Yeah.
I want to be able to hear what they're saying. I don't want to see people coughing. I don't want to see floating head. There's just like I am kind of a snob about that. I will admit that.
Totally.
But I've been sitting in on a bunch of readings, right? A bunch of readings lately.
Yeah.
And the readings are really interesting to me because that's definitely like a low cost way. It doesn't cost anything, not very many resources. And then I was thinking about like, sometimes you can see just how many people are watching, right? And sometimes there's like hella people watching a streaming of a reading.
Right.
For a theater. And like when you think about like the theater company's space, I'm like, okay, this is like a 99 seat theater, but there's like 130 people watching this. Or, oh, this is only a 49 seat theater, but there's 100 people watching this. So I'm like, so that the capacity like to reach a larger audience is huge because a lot of people might not want to leave their houses. And, once we're past this, some people might not want to travel out at night, but then they'll be perfectly happy and content to sit and watch a reading on their computer and be in their own space.
Yeah.
And you might get a higher audience, a higher turnout on very specific events. And it's, I think, potentially a great way for theater companies to engage with their audience. Because I think that's an important part too. You can't just like put out, I think it can feel weird and disingenuous for a theater to be like, to only produce and then be like, and come travel to our theater and pay $60 to come see our play. And also, right? Like,
right.
But if you're actually like actively like doing things online, you're engaging with your audience, you're showing that you actually care. That's a whole different aspect. And I think that right now certain theaters are exploring that more and starting to understand the value in that. So I'm curious to see where that leads moving forward as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, me too. I struggle with like those readings are really cool, but then there's like that weird like because it's like online, there's like that weird like delay, right? Of like it's hard to react like perfectly in time because there's like that weird delay, that Zoom delay that's going on where it's like not really in real time. It's like a little bit behind, and it's weird like how it's like it's really really like almost microscopic at the time. It's like in milliseconds the delay, but you still feel it.
Yeah, you still feel it.
Sure.
You still feel that like that weird delay. I think I'm wondering. I think like one cool example to bring up about I think like a fresh way that they're doing it is like Daniel Mohlman's play Nexus. They're doing it. It's like a play between two people.
I've seen that.
Yeah, you've seen the thing. Okay, great. Yeah, so they're actually like, and then the actors are like just couples that live together, so they actually don't have to have that weird like millisecond delay, and they are acting like in the same space with each other, and they are doing like this like, so it like technically is a lot more live, but then I'm wondering like when the phases start getting phased in of like closing down, maybe theaters will just like stream from their theater, so then only the actors are at risk and not like the entire audience. So like maybe we'll get like maybe the National Theater thing will actually be live, like because right now they're playing back old recordings that they did. So I'm wondering if they just put like a skeleton crew in there, and then like you pay for a ticket to get in on the Zoom thing, similar to how like you pay for NFL, like if you want to see a game on the NFL or the UFC, it's like pay-per-view sort of a deal. So I'm wondering maybe like pay-per-view gets incorporated more into like live events, like theater. Maybe they adopt that like pay-per-view strategy.
Maybe. That's an interesting thought.
And there's a way to, run talkbacks and stuff, and ways to engage with audience after that as well. Live stream questions, stuff like that. The other thing that was like really interesting about Danielle's play is I don't know if they did this for your viewing, but for the viewing I participated in, they asked everyone watching to keep their microphones on. So that you can respond in real time, so that people could hear like the audience interaction. You could actually be there, right?
I love that.
So you could hear laughs and like gasps and all that stuff in appropriate times. It was a trip. I don't know. So nice. I don't know how I feel about it.
Yeah,
because it's a really interesting concept, and I totally get it. But at the same time, the theater space is very different from your home setting. You got motherfuckers making chicken and shit in the background, like you're like, and there's like some people that are like way too close to the microphone, so you can't even hear the actors. You just hear somebody just like, eating
his Frito chips.
Back up from the.
Just chomping on some chips just during the show. Oh no, it's gnarly.
Right. So I mean, it's a really interesting concept, and I'm fascinated by it.
That'd be so funny.
Well, I'm excited. I'm tuning into my first one. Spencer and Julia are doing it, the one on May 17th. So that's when I'll be tuning in. I think that'll be my first my first view of the show.
Yeah. Same
here.
Word.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah, we're gonna watch it on the 17th. What if you have this like live play going on, you have all the microphones on, you're all listening, and it's all going good, and then someone's phone goes off through everything.
Right. Yep.
I don't know. I think that
could happen.
You're like, motherfucker. Even through the interwebs, even when we're all not even in the same room, you motherfucker had to leave your phone on. They would just say, that would even like pop up like who on the screen. That's how Zoom works, right? If it's like whoever the audio's picking up, person shows up on the screen, so it just shames that motherfucker who's doing it. Like, well, you're working around trying to like turn it off. That's funny. Anyway,
oh man.
Well, my gosh.
Okay, so I'm going to talk to you one more time. Oh, go ahead, Warren.
No, you
Sorry.
go, Nick. You go.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, a little bit of a left turn. Okay, so back to the video content and going viral, and I'm more asking this selfishly for myself. What do you think, what has been maybe some of the things that you've noticed help your videos go viral? Is it have you recognized, is it more about the hashtags that you're using on your videos, or if you're talking about a popular topic versus where you're uploading, what's that magic sauce? Because you got a couple videos in there with hundreds of views. So that's what are you putting in them to make them that way?
Well, I mean, first of all, I would say that I think in my definition of viral, my channel, nothing on my channel would ever match it. But I think that yet. But I think that there are a lot of factors. I think that my most successful videos I have found have a couple of different things going for, and it's still a process that I'm currently in and figuring it out with every post, right? But I think that what I can say for sure is snappy captions, right? Titles and captions for your videos that make people want to read them or want to click on it. A catchy thumbnail is really important as well. So it's all about visual representation, not just about the content, but how it looks.
That first impression is huge. Really important.
Yep.
Yeah. We still
I'm not clicking on no bullshit. Right?
Right.
And it's the same with really good audition monologues. You want a monologue that starts off with a bang. I always say that a monologue that starts off with "fuck you" is already gold, because you've already got you've got someone's attention right from the get-go,
totally.
right? So yeah, presentation. So yeah, thumbnails and captions are important. Depending on the platform you're using, hashtags can be very important. So like Facebook, I
Right.
think that people don't really use Facebook for They don't use hashtags on. I mean, people use hashtags on Facebook, but I don't know that people are searching for hashtags on Facebook as they are on like
on Instagram.
Right.
Instagram, TikTok, right?
Right.
So Instagram, TikTok, those platforms, that's where hashtags matter, and I think the success for hashtags are about creating content that you can, I think, attach a very unique hashtag to. Something like I think like Sunday check-in, using like with my video series, and then using Sunday check-in hashtag, people can now search for that specific series using that hashtag. But then it's also about finding out what's trending, what hashtags are being searched a lot, and using those as well. And I've seen videos where you like watch the video and then you look at the hashtags and then you see people using hashtags that are trending, but the video has nothing to do with the hashtag. They're just using it so people will watch it.
Huh.
So hashtags can be important depending on the platform. And then I would also say this one is really hard for me to nail down, but I know it's important, and it is the time of day that you post.
Oh yeah, yeah.
It's the time of day, and it's consistency. Your followers definitely want to know that you are consistent. You're not someone who's just going to drop off the face of the earth, right?
Yeah.
Because then that feels like a waste of time. So I think being consistent with your posts, or being upfront about when you're posting, if you establish with your audience, hey, new posts every Thursday, right? Every Tuesday, every Thursday, or posting every weekend. Those are the things that people will be able to count on.
Right.
But then also, I think there's a very specific time of day where people are most active. People are active on social media at different times of the day more often than others. So I think it's about dialing in where your audience is most active and then making sure you're posting at that time, or just letting your audience know what time you post.
Yeah, so that
But
they
that's
know,
hard,
like, for
especially
you, it's
right
like if
now.
They wake up. Oh, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say that it's especially hard to nail down right now because nobody is on a regular schedule. Well, a lot of people aren't on regular schedule.
Right.
True.
So if a lot of people, if they're working until 5 p.m., then you might not. If your audience is working till 5, then you might not post until 5:30 or 6.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. When
but
you know
if
they're like
you don't
on the
know
train
when, if they're
home,
just
yeah.
right. But if we don't know when people are working, or when they're sleeping, or when they're on social media, it's hard to really pinpoint when the best time to post is.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
That's the whole thing. You got to be able to cast a wide net in some way too with it. It's like everybody's doing totally different schedules right now through this time. So you're like, all right, well, what's like the Venn diagram of great times to be able to like post? Where's that perfect like sweet spot to be able to do it in, right?
Yeah. And I've been experimenting a lot with it. I've been trying to post. There was a period of time where I was posting every morning at like 9:30 or 9:45 in the morning, and then that way it just sort of in hopes of catching people who are just waking up. Because if people are like me,
Right.
then the first thing I do when I get up is scroll through my phone for like 40 minutes. And then I lay in my bed and scroll through my phone.
Yeah.
And then I get up and start the day. So the hope is to then catch those people who are just waking up and scrolling. And then it has the rest of the day to kind of gain traction and be up. But then, sometimes I do that and the videos go unnoticed. But that's about algorithms too. I think that, especially for Facebook, like
Truly.
if you post videos that are content that's less than 3 minutes long, it doesn't push those videos out to people as organically as it does longer form content. Yeah. So
which is great.
The Facebook might not be a great platform to post like TikTok videos or anything under 3 minutes. I do it anyways because I want the majority of my content to be accessible to everybody
On any platform, right?
Great.
Right.
Yeah. But I don't know. And YouTube, I'm still figuring out. YouTube's a really tricky one for me because the market feels oversaturated, but then also YouTube feels like it might just be about like how-to videos and tutorials and stuff, right? Like you can use YouTube for almost anything, but I find like thinking about what I use it for nowadays, sometimes I watch sketch comedy on it. There are a couple of channels specifically that I watch, but a lot of times I'm going to YouTube to find out, to figure out how to do something.
Yeah.
Right. So it's hard. I don't know. I'm still trying to figure out YouTube. I'm still trying to crack YouTube.
Yeah.
I'm using YouTube currently to watch Joe Rogan and learn about different tribes that are in the Amazon. So,
Wow.
yeah, it's like very, very different, I'd say, usage. But yeah, there's so much good stuff on there too. Like Vice News is on YouTube. You can get your news on YouTube. You can get, it's just like nailing down your market, I guess.
Yeah.
Right now, our strategy is just, as I think is similar to yours. We're just trying to cast as wide of a net as we can. You know, we're on like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and then like every other podcast, like Stitcher. We're on all of them, and then we're also on YouTube and Facebook and Instagram. We're not on TikTok yet, but we might have to look into that now. Although I don't know that one's a good one for podcasting. Probably not.
Right, that 15-second podcast.
You can only, there's only one way to find out. Yeah, it's like the whole page is just like an entire podcast, all 15-second bits of the podcast. Yeah, no, I don't think that works out too well.
Because that's the thing, too. It's like the length of content also matters. People, some people only have about 15 seconds of attention span for your content.
For a couple minutes even. Yeah, totally. That
difference between Facebook and Instagram is definitely something I've been playing. I do social media for like a kids entertainment company. And like I'll definitely tailor, like I have to make sure that I'm cutting my Instagram videos to like be 1 minute or a little bit under so that it fits better in the algorithm there. But then I don't edit the videos as much for the Facebook because I know that like the longer form videos do better there. So
interesting.
So I guess like kind of tailoring and cutting up your content, being specific for
figuring out what works. Yeah. What I will say that I've noticed is people have found success filming their podcast recordings as well.
Yes. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, that's
and
like what Joe Rogan's
video
been doing.
Content. Yeah. So that's like a 2-for-1. You can create video content and podcast content at the same time, and then use them in different ways.
Yeah.
Some of my favorite content recently is actually based on that concept. Like, I don't know, have you guys watched Midnight Gospel on Netflix?
No, not yet.
No.
But it looks really
so that's
interesting.
Basically, it is very interesting. It's wonderful. It's by the creator of Adventure Time. So it's going to be fire. They basically do long form podcasts, like, and it's just like deep conversations that people are having. My favorite one is the one he actually does one with his mom. But then what's going on screen is like these cartoons that are like traveling to this like distant planet to fight a dragon, right? But it has almost it somewhat relates to what they're talking about, but it also like is just this like very imaginative way of viewing.
That's cool.
So it's like it's this weird mashup of mediums, and it works really well. I mean, I would give it a 10 out of 10. I love it. So
that's very cool.
Midnight Gospel.
Midnight Gospel. Yeah.
Okay. All right. I'm gonna check that out. That sounds dope.
Yeah. And people need to be checking out your stuff, papadontcreech. We need to, like, just saying that out as well. I'm just going to say this, Stu. Like, the stuff that you've been putting out there, man, has just been really, like, it's been cracking me up a lot. And I think you've been making some great content. That Murder Hornets video, specifically, was, I was rolling on that one. So I just want to give you a shout out too, man, because like what you've been doing, I think is really cool. And people need to start watching you and keep up to date on your stuff, because I think you got some cool content coming out there.
Thank you. I really appreciate that.
I'm
having a lot of fun doing it.
Yeah.
I'll be tuning in every Sunday, man. These Sunday check-ins are fantastic.
Thank
feeling
you.
uplifted.
Thank you.
You're also so honest, you know, like that's one thing I like about it too. Is like you just feel free to talk about what's on your heart, what's going on, and then you're like leaving everyone with a positive message. I feel like I'm at church. It's amazing.
Hey.
So.
There you go.
I believe in. I think that's another key to being successful with the content you put out is that honesty. I think people want to see the real you.
Totally.
And I think I'm like, I have fun with my videos, and I think I make it clear when I'm kind of playing a character, doing a character thing. But the Sunday check-ins are really, it's important to me that I be as honest and drop all the BS as possible. Like I even try to just leave my hair like it looked when I woke up that morning. I try to take my earrings out. I try not to hide behind anything.
Yeah.
And just be honest. Yeah.
Honesty is what we need right now. I think everyone can kind of really agree with that. This reveals so much. This time reveals so much, and having that reality, especially through someone that's like you're watching on screen, but you're watching someone be truly themselves and fully themselves, is a refreshing thing to have. So yeah, I'm looking forward to people watching more of those. You're like comedy videos as well as Sunday check-ins, because I think there's some special stuff there, my friend.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
And thanks for, again, letting me come on and rap with you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks for being on.
It's been a great time.
We have taken a journey.
I know, shoot. It's been like an hour and a half already. What the hell? We've been going, guys. We've been doing it. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, Andrew, thanks so much for coming on this podcast, man. It's really been a pleasure. And guys, like people listening out there, again, papadontcreech, all one word. Creech, CREECH. Remember, keep checking out his stuff because honestly, you're gonna be wanting to be the first. All right. So yeah, thanks again for coming on, Andrew. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, man, it was great meeting you.
Thank you. Big ups to y'all for doing this thing. I look forward to hearing all of the episodes and keeping up with y'all. So thank you. Keep it up.
Sweet.
Rock on.
Rock on.
Thank you so much for joining us on our conversational journey west with Andrew Lee Creech.
Yeah, we hope you guys enjoyed the show. We definitely enjoyed our conversation with Andrew. Honestly, I'm coming away with a lot of different perspectives on a whole bunch of different things. So we hope that you guys are too. A couple things to take care of before we end it. Make sure to check out all of his material under the handle papadontcreech.
Papadontcreech.
All one word. CREECH as the papadontcreech. That's his last name.
Papadontcreech.
Papadontcreech.
Rhythm I've ever done. I'll have to do that one.
But it's in there, so you know
it's there.
It's in there like swimware.
And you're listening to it, and I haven't cut it, so
right.
That one's on you.
That's on you. Or it's on me.
I don't know.
It's on me.
It's on me.
Get it off. Get it off me. Oh. What were you talking about?
I'm coming in the back door. I don't know. My leg. Dead. Why are you still listening? Not to come drop buttons. Okay, that's the last one.
We're the weirdest human beings.
We are. Thanks for listening to us. And yeah, until next time, fam.
Yeah. Fuck off.
Jesus Christ. Stop listening. Like, literally stop listening to this. I don't know why you're wasting your time.
Right now.
I'm just bad at editing sound, so we're still recording the outro. Why are you still... Turn it off.
Turn it off. Turn the podcast off. Wait till next week.
Goodbye.
Bye.